Hello, I'm Sailaja Menon. Today we are going to be talking about how therapy can really help us through some of the difficult times that we face in life. We have a lot of how-to questions, don't we? In terms of how to manage life or how to manage our emotions or how to manage our feelings. And many times we don't even realize that counseling or therapy can really help us to rectify or to kind of give us the solutions in these situations. Many times there is this belief that counseling or therapy is actually only a place to go when there is really a problem, but not necessarily. Therapy can also be a wonderful place for you to kind of start off to really discuss about some of the how-to questions that you kind of constantly think about in life. We'll get to those questions in a few minutes, but before we go there, what I wanted to do today is to give you a little bit of a feel of what a therapist's office is like before you actually kind of think about coming in, making that phone call and coming in to talk to us. So let's go ahead and let's kind of go forward and give you an intro of how this therapy room is going to be like. All right, let's go. So here you are, and this is the room where you come in to kind of seek your counseling sessions or the therapy sessions as we call it. One of the reasons why I felt that this video was so important to discuss was because lately, those of us who live in the UAE, we might have read so many different stories about how there have been so many untimely deaths in people. And especially in those people who actually looks very fit, they look happy, they look fine in many sense of the word, they are on top of the game when it comes to their work, have a very happy, life. But what is happening here perhaps is for these untimely deaths, as we go deeper into understanding what is causing it, we start to realize that many of them have really found it very difficult to manage their emotional health. There has been a lot of challenges managing their emotional wellness. What I mean by that is actually ignoring the stress and anxiety that comes up in your life. So what has happened in some of these people, whether it's a celebrity, whether it's just someone we know, it could be a friend, or it could be someone we heard about, what is really happening is that these stresses and anxiety has gone beyond a saturation point because they have just not been able to kind of pick the cues to understand that this is definitely reversible and treatment is out there if you really approach a counselor. So the purpose of today's session is really to introduce you all, just going back and reiterating what I just said a few minutes ago, that you don't need to really wait to come and see a counselor only if you have a major problem. You could come and see a counselor even if you're struggling with some of your basic day-to-day life issues that you don't seem to really get it right. And because of that, you are unable to be happy. So the purpose of coming to a counselor is that it helps you to cultivate meaningful, compassionate, purposeful life. Simply put, a happier life. Stress and anxiety is not something that only impacts our emotional health, it can also impact our physical health. So when I talk about untimely death, something that you don't even expect, it could be caused because of the impact it has on our physical health. So it is extremely important that we pay attention to stress and anxiety and find the right coping strategies to deal with it. We all will agree as human beings, we all try to handle our lives the best way we can by controlling it. Sometimes we are trying to control what people say, what people feel, what people do about us. Sometimes we are just internalizing our feelings, and that is how we control our life. Sometimes we don't do really much about our life because we just feel life is not really going the way we want it to go. So one of the best ways to be is to not really do anything about it. We tend to become very complacent and not really, do anything about our lives. And sometimes there are days where you all will agree with me that we would wake up and say, why is our life the way it is? Why is it moving in the direction it is? We feel like we are stuck in the midst of a life storm, and all we are doing in terms of a response is fight, flight, or flee. We don't really handle it. The way we control the decisions or the life events is by fighting it, by fleeing away from it, or by actually freezing, by doing nothing about it. So it's so very important for us to understand that in spite of all of what I have just shared, in spite of all the life-altering events that we all could face, we all have, the power within us. We are all equipped with the power that we have within us to be able to deal with it. And I think at this point, with the help of a counselor, you all can really fix, your life in the manner that you want to fix it. Because simply put, what I'm trying to say here is you can make your life a lot more happier. From here on, in this video, what I really like to do is to talk some of the how-to questions that comes up often in our lives. We touched that at the onset of this video. I kind of said several times about how-to issues. We are going to now take a few minutes and talk about the how-tos of our life and how can we fix that with therapy or with counseling. Okay, to start off by responding to some of those how-to questions. Now, as I kind of go through this list, I'm sure most of you will feel that you have been there asking this question to yourself. How to talk to yourself? I think that's one of the biggest questions that comes up. Now, what happens when you bring that question into therapy? What you learn in therapy is you learn, ways of how to talk to yourself. What I mean by that is self-talk, positive self-talk. Sometimes that's all what we need to keep moving forward and to be positive and to be progressive in our life. So you learn ways, you learn strategies, you learn coping strategies in your counseling session with your psychologist or your counselor. The other thing we also have as a question that comes up in our head is how to react to others. Many times we all are kind of caught by some of our reactions towards people in happy times and in unhappy times. So what you learn in therapy or in counseling is how to really manage your emotions, how to manage it in the manner where you don't react to your emotions, but you learn to engage in your emotions. And in that way, you also learn how to prevent yourself from having negative behaviors that come out of your emotions. You learn that in therapy. How to say yes or no. This is such a difficult thing, isn't it? We all want to get the approval of others. We all want to be loved and liked by others. And many times we don't say no as much as we should. Or sometimes we say yes because we feel that is the desired, answer from the other party. When you come into therapy, you learn from your therapist how to really draw those lines of boundaries around you to say yes and to say no and still be lovable and still be likable. How to learn to have space in your life. We all sometimes get stuck in enmeshed boundaries in relationships, in friendships, in social settings. We don't know how to draw our boundaries, and what happens is before too long, we are sometimes stuck in very toxic relationships, or we are kind of surrounded by negativity. When you come into therapy, you learn how to really draw those boundaries clearly around you, where you have a healthy relationship with people. You have a very healthy dynamic with individuals. You learn to understand where your limits are and you draw those boundaries as clearly as you can. Sometimes we ask this question of how to be honest with self. This is a very difficult question, being honest with yourself and kind of really accepting that there are certain things about us that we are not very proud about. And we don't really accept it. Every one of us are made with good and not so good characteristics or traits. And I think the very fact that we are able to accept it, take ownership for it, will truly kind of help you to move forward in the manner that you want to and progress in your life. Bring that to your therapy. Bring that to your counselor, and you would be amazed to see how well you would be able to accept the good and the not so good about yourself and really take ownership about it and move on, applying that in your day-to-day life. So you learn that. You really learn to discover about yourself, which I think is a very important part of life's journey. We sometimes ask, how do I manage my racing thoughts? We have so much of thoughts running in our head. It's almost like a clutter, a mental clutter. And why do these racing thoughts arise? Because you're constantly wondering, what is going to happen to me tomorrow? What is my life going to be like tomorrow? So there is a heightened sense of anxiety. Anxiety to a great extent is wonderful. You need some amount of anxiety in life. I think that's what keeps you competitive. But I think when it is on a heightened level, then it's truly going to put you in these heightened state of always wondering what is going to happen, expecting the unexpected, expecting the worst case scenario, and these racing thoughts really overwhelm you and take over your life. When you come into therapy, you truly learn to understand the meaning of what these racing thoughts are and how do you really help to declutter what those thoughts are in your head, and to be able to kind of find a certain sense of calmness in how you manage and deal with your life. You also ask sometimes, how do I deal with grief? Many of us in our lives, at some point in our lives, we are going to go through a certain amount of loss or a certain amount of people leaving us forever, and there is going to be immense grief and loss around it. We tend to sometimes just push it under the rug and move forward in our lives, isn't it? So when you come to therapy, that's a very beautiful place, a safe place, a secure place to be able to resolve your grief and loss, which you might be carrying forward for months and years together, not knowing how to really resolve it. Therapy can teach you, counseling can teach you how to resolve your grief and loss. You also sometimes ask, how do I kind of really treat my body well and treat it with respect and regard? Why do I not be able to do that? Now, when you come into therapy, you learn how to really respect yourself, you learn how to regard yourself, you learn to kind of improve your self-esteem, your self-confidence, you learn to be empowered, to get empowered, and at the same time, not to treat your body just with food. Eating food to comfort yourself, but actually respecting and regarding your body just with your self-esteem and self-confidence. Another question that comes up constantly is how to deal with regrets. We all have regrets. All of us do. I don't think any of us are spared from regrets of certain things that we did, certain things we said, certain things we kind of should not have done in our lives. We all go back to it. We all keep reminiscing, what we did wrong. But remember, you are here now, and staying in the here and now helps you to do things that you know today. In therapy, you learn to understand that you certainly do not have control of what perhaps have happened because you did what you did based on what you knew at that point in time in your life. But today, you are in a better place to know that you should not have done what you did because you have a better worldview, you have more experiences to kind of teach you and tell you to do things differently. So move on, Therapy teaches you how to move on. Therapy teaches you how to move away from those regrets, not being too hard on yourself, not being too, tough on yourself, and to be able to kind of move forward in a progressive way, healing yourself. And last but not least, how to take care of yourself. Therapy can really teach you how to take care of yourself. We all don't do a good job with that, do we? We tend to kind of really overstretch ourselves. Our plates are so full and overflowing most times that we don't really give much time to ourselves at all. We are trying to do everything we can do, but not really give much time to yourself. Therapy can teach you to find a good work-life balance. Therapy can teach you to prevent yourself from having a burnout or have work fatigue, or teach you to kind of make me time, how to have time for yourself by having a wonderful balance between your work, your social life, your relationships, and everything else that's important to you. So finding a total holistic balance. I think that's so very important. So just looking through this list of what we have shared today on the how-tos, I think you will relate to most of them, because this is kind of very common questions that comes up in all of us as to how do we deal with it. We all try our very best to deal with it on our own, but I think you will also agree that sometimes we really struggle to do this on our own. And I think that is where coming into counseling can help, because the counseling process is like a crutch that helps you to kind of achieve all those answers that you need to achieve and kind of cultivate a meaningful, compassionate, and a purposeful life.